This week on the Therapy Dogs Australia podcast, Sam and I are joined by Dr. Olga Lynn, a veterinarian who created an online pet first aid course. We discuss recognising early signs of illness in animals, balancing prompt action with a calm demeanour, and handling emergencies during animal assisted services. We also share personal experiences with pet emergencies, stress the importance of owner preparedness, and encourage proper animal care. Enjoy. Hi everyone. Welcome back to the Therapy Dogs Australia podcast. I'm Max, the social media manager for Therapy Dogs Australia, and we have two people on today. So we've got Sam King, of course, the owner of Therapy Dogs Australia. How are you, Sam?
I'm good, Max. How are you?
I'm good. And we've also got Dr. Olga Lynn with us today. Hi, Olga.
Hey guys, how you going?
Good, very good. We've been looking forward to this podcast episode. So glad it's finally happening. Olga, do you want to just start by giving the listeners a little bit of background on yourself?
Yes, of course. So my name is Dr. Olga. I am an emergency vet. I've been at emergency probably for about 7 years. I used to work in Melbourne and then we moved up to the sunny coast about a year and a half ago. I've also done a lot of shelter medicine because I'm really passionate about rescue and adoption. And I've also been involved in a lot of greyhound rescue projects, mostly in Melbourne. But yeah, the other thing that I've done is I've created an online pet first aid course, which I launched mid this year. Over the years, I've had so many owners that you can imagine emergency can be quite a tragic environment for some owners. And a lot of people ask, could I recognize symptoms sooner? Could I have done anything at home? And that's what prompted me to actually create the course. And I've had some really great feedback. So yeah, really excited.
That's awesome. Sam, did you do the course?
I did do the course. So I met Olga at one of the pet expos, Max.
Oh, okay.
So I can't remember which one it was, but I was cruising around the stalls buying everything from everywhere, as you do at the expos.
As you do, yeah.
So much fun. So yeah, walked past and I was like, pet first aid. So backstory, all right. So I did pet first aid when I did my dog training certification, but it was very basic. So, and it was a bit boring. Like it was a recording of someone giving a lecture. Like,
yeah.
So, and that was fun, but I was like right into it because this will come to light during this conversation, but I'm a little bit of a pet hypochondriac. So I think like the worst in most situations. So I was like right into it, but I learned, like you learn a bit and then you're like, okay, like, all right. Amy, who co-facilitates our courses, she used to be a vet nurse and a wildlife carer.
Know that.
So yeah.
Goodness, cool.
I know. So when like within our course, we have a little pet first aid lecture that Amy put together because we need it. Like we actually need it. So because things happen, and I'll have some stories for everybody today of all the crazy things that have happened to me in my sessions over the last 10 or so years. But yeah, Amy put that together. And then I was walking through the expo and I walked past Olga's little stall and I was like, like an online pet first aid course. I was like, our course is online. Like that could be really useful. So, got to chatting and I signed up and did the course and it is so good.
Oh,
it's so good. I'm telling everyone to do it. Everyone I meet, everyone I've ever met in my life, I'm like, have you done this? But not even just our like clients of Therapy Dogs Australia, just people in the street.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm like, hey, walking down the street, I'm like, have you done pet first aid? Because you probably should. Don't you know that every day is an opportunity for your pet to kill itself, basically. Like that's how I live my life.
Pretty accurate.
Especially up here in Queensland, we've got the most dangerous animals. We're blessed with snakes, ticks, cane toads, all of the above.
I had what did I do? I was listening to one of the lectures in Olga's course while I was driving to work, and I got to work and I had to like calm myself down because I was like, oh my God, I've like left the dogs at home and they're gonna be like they're gonna be bitten by snakes. It was something really, I can't remember what it was now, but I got to work and I was like, you need to calm down. You need to calm down.
Bit of self-regulation.
Day. Fine. It's all right. Yeah, but anyway, I found it really useful. The course has got, we'll talk more about it, but highly recommend. So I thought we'll get Olga in because there's lots of things. So my journey has included, since I did the dog thing, I got horses. And when you get horses, you immediately get like a little invisible badge of vet nurse, because your horses also try to kill themselves every day. And they're like, you learn how to look after them, and you become very, very good. They're so big, everything's so dramatic. You get very good at knowing what is something that you look after at home, what's something that you get the vet out, because it's not easy, like getting the vet out to your horses. You have to, especially emergency vet and stuff, like it's not, you can't just put them in the car and cruise down.
Exactly.
Down to my the emergency vet.
And it will usually happen at like 3 a.m. as well, not during business hours. So that's always fun.
Yeah, it's always after hours, and usually like public holidays or Sundays. Always. So you learn quite quickly like which things to like call about and which things not. But also equine vets are like, we're not coming out for that. Like, like they're not.
I'll tell you.
Like you send them photos of stuff and things like that, and they're like, yeah, that's fine, just do whatever. Or they're like, okay, we'll be out when we can. But yeah, you get pretty good at that sort of stuff. But the canine industry is not like that. There's not that level of information that you have for your horses, or even livestock people, like even the goats and stuff. Like I have learned a lot about goats after, especially like one of my goats tried to die from Barber's bollworm. Oh my God. She had a blood transfusion at the hospital.
Holy cow.
No, you did tell. Yeah.
Little Rocket. My little Rocket tried to die. I was like, Rocket. Her name's Rocket, but she's a bit silly. Rocket. She's like this all the time. That's how she looked at you. I don't know if there's something happened to her when she had Barber's cold and nearly died, but she just like all the time. So I call her Rocket. And so it's like this big deal. Worms. It's a big problem. Southeast Queensland goats, sheep, worms. They're resistant.
I didn't realise it was such an issue. Yeah.
It's a whole different ballgame. Yeah, production
ridiculous.
Medicine. Yeah.
Ridiculous. Anyway, so the canine world is so lacking in our first aid stuff. Like you should see the cabinets I've got here. For my first aid stuff.
You got a pharmacy at home?
Yep.
Should have taken a photo, Sam.
Sure do. So much so that I haven't personally been to the doctor in years, because I have everything already at home. So one of these ointments is going to have to.
Personal pharmacy.
Do you know what fixes everything? Filter back. If anyone knows what I'm talking about.
No.
That's the zinc cream that you put on horses, like scratches and scrapes and stuff. It fixes everything. Zinc fixes everything. Anyway, it's not medical advice. This is not medical advice.
Disclaimer.
You should probably see a GP. So anyway, that's what I thought. I like my knowledge improved heaps since being a horse husbandry person. And I can deal, and also just like heaps of experience with the dogs now. But generally speaking, people don't know what is an emergency and what's not. That's one of the first things that Olga goes through in the course, like what is an emergency and what's not an emergency. And it was great. Fantastic. Highly recommend. If anybody, we'll obviously put in the show notes how you can access it, etc., etc. But yeah.
You always need to like re-listen to the course once a year, or also like a refresher. Yeah.
And
because it's lifetime access. Yeah.
You can.
It's great.
So you just, like I literally just typed in before, first aid course. There's little quizzes in it. There's all these little videos and quizzes. So someone said something to me, like someone asked me a question about something the other week, and I was like, oh, that was in the course. And I just literally pulled it up You can just look at it. There's little videos, and then there's fact sheets. Like the notes are written like underneath
Perfect.
the videos.
That's so
Then
helpful for like proper learning,
Mhm.
like watching, reading. Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to cater to different styles of learning. So that's why I had the text plus the videos, and then you've got the ebook as well that kind of summarizes everything.
Oh,
Yeah.
love a good ebook.
So good.
Awesome.
Which I haven't. Can you print that out?
Yes, yep, 100%. Yeah.
That's what I need to do, is print that out. Haven't done that yet. But because then you would just have like a quick reference.
Yeah, you can just have it with your cabinet of goodies.
Yeah. Yeah. Because the things happen. Like when things happen, you don't get any warning. That's the idea, isn't it, Olga, of the first aid thing?
100%. Yeah. Emergencies can happen in seconds, like your chokings, your electrocution, even like symptoms of GDV, like that bloat condition in dogs, that can come on so quick. And I think having a lot of owners obviously go through a lot of heartbreak, and seeing that there were signs that were missed, like I'll ask obviously a really thorough medical history, and I'll start noticing that, okay, maybe symptoms started a lot sooner than the owner actually realized. And that's what I really aim to teach in the course. Because if you recognize symptoms early and you get the intervention quickly, then your pet's got a much higher chance of survival. Whereas if you've missed the early signs and they progress and progress, then it just can become a disaster. So
yeah, and it's so heartbreaking to learn
Yeah.
that, yeah, you missed the early signs. Yeah, because
I-
they can be such simple
yeah.
things too, like,
Horrible.
you know, panting or
You've got to know your dog's baseline.
Yep,
yes.
exactly. You've got to learn what's normal first, and that's exactly what I go through for dogs and for cats. So once you get used to what's normal, then you can actually learn what's abnormal, and that'll be different from animal to animal as well. And you know your dog best, so once you get that baseline, then you're so much more equipped to figure out what is a problem.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I'm gonna want to do the course.
You have to. I told Amy as well. Amy was like, so I'm definitely signing up and doing it. Okay, so I thought it would be fun to go. Obviously, we're not going to go into the amount of detail that's in the course. To go into some of the look, I'll just look at the things that I think are going to pop up the most. Okay, here's a little spiel for you, everybody. Emergencies happen in your client sessions sometimes. And I've had a number of those happen. And you do need to know, when is this a situation where I now need to act immediately to get my dog out of here, or it could die, versus, oh, I can see that something's not right and I need to. So it's not just about the dog in the session. There's a client there. I've had things happen in client sessions before, and it's a very difficult to navigate balancing act of, I need to make sure that this dog is fine or this horse is fine, and not going to drop dead if I don't act immediately, versus when can I go, everything's fine, okay, and get to the end of someone's session and end a session normally, so that they aren't now traumatized by whatever is going on, and you can then go, okay, because it's a lot easier to cancel your next session and just go, oh, the therapist is sick, to cancel. You can cancel the rest of your day, no problem, that's fine, but the session that you're in right now is a problem, because we're caring for a human being who cares about the animal. So I'm gonna talk through some of the things. I'm gonna get Olga to talk to us about some of the things that I think are the most common, most likely to pop up, and the most serious. So I want to talk about like bloat and heat stress and things like that. But I just thought it would be fun to talk about some of the very traumatic things that have happened to me first.
Please do.
I'm really, really curious. Yeah, please tell.
I've ended a session mid-session because a horse started to colic immediately in front of me. And so he was eating his hay on the ground, and we were not even in the paddock. We were sitting up out of the paddock, but observing, watching the horses. And he's eating the hay, and he just walks away from the hay, paws at the ground, kicks at his belly, drop, roll. And I was like, that's weird. Gets up, yawning, biting at his tummy, kicking up at his belly, pouring at the ground, drop, roll. And I was like, oh, that's a colic. That's a colic. Those are all signs of colic. If you don't know what the signs of colic are, like colic kills horses all the time. Colic means stomach ache, basically, pain in the stomach. And the way that it kills horses is because they roll, because they're in pain. And then when they roll up and twist all of their insides. Fun note, I have paid for a colic surgery before for my miniature horse, and for all of the vet everything, including the surgery, but the pre and post, I was at about 20 grand for that horse. And I had no money. I maxed out a credit card and a vet pay loan. So, and it was a nightmare. But anyway, so I'm watching this horse colic, and I was like, so colic, it's an emergency. It's right now, because like I said, you cannot just put your horse in the car and rush to the vet and be there in 20 minutes. You've got to get on the phone to ring multiple vets to see who's going to get there first. So it's a bit of a muck around to get it seen to, because it is an emergency. But the other thing that you have to do is you need to go and put a halter on your horse and walk it around so that it stops rolling, because the rolling is what will kill it. So you have to act now, or it can be a very painful death and like a very high chance of death.
Which
trigger
horse
warning.
was
We'll have to put a
this?
trigger warning at the beginning of this. Power. This was a few years ago.
Yeah. Okay.
So anyway, I had to end the session because I was like, okay, and I had to, and the girl that I was with, that like she was a young teenager then, very, very animal conscious, very, very, like not someone who doesn't care, like, not that there would be that many people, but so I had to really package it to her and
How did
explain.
can you sort of give us an idea of what you said?
Yes. So I had to explain, like, because I'm moving, like I've got to get moving. So I had to explain to her, the horse is just acting like it's got a tummy ache, and that can be pretty serious. So, is it all right if we finish up a little bit early today? I think it was like 20 minutes early or something. Is that okay? And I can, contact you later. And if there's anything else you wanted to talk about today, like we can reconvene and blah, blah, blah. And she was fine. Like she didn't have anything major that she needed to work on in the session. Or if the NDIS is listening, yes, she did. Every session. Anyway, so, and she was obviously fine, like very massive animal advocate, like more than the average kid. So anyway, but then I've got to, like, her parents are at the car because we're at the farm. And so then I've got to say to them, I just need to ring the vet because one of the horses is not well, and is it okay? And they were lovely. Like they were like, oh, of course, no problem. Like, da da da. And I was like, okay, but you still the whole time, like, I'm like, get out.
Emergency.
Leave now. Because I'm like, okay, like you've got to still package it for this person. Like you can't start calling the vet right now with them in front of you. Like, I've got a colic, like that, because that's a really clinical conversation that happens as well. Because they're like, what's happening? This, blah, 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 blah. Like I don't want to have that conversation in front of someone who could be affected negatively by it. Anyway, so they left and I got the vet out. So he had like a spasmodic colic where it's like a diarrhea, like, actually, because that's right, he walked away from the hay, did a poo, and then was all colicky. And I was like, what is this? But it was like a tummy bug, basically, that he picked up, but they had to treat him. And then he came through. I had to watch him and all that. And he came through and he was fine, because I was like, I'm not paying for another colic surgery, that's for sure. Anyway, so that happened to me. I had Oliver knock himself out, gave himself a concussion. Running through my room, he just was looking at the other dog and hit a pole. And I knew immediately, like I was like, he's concussed. But that's something that has already happened, if that makes sense. Like the concussion has already happened. It's not happening
Yes.
Like it's, do you know what I mean? Like it's not
So
like
it can
a,
wait. Is that what you
yes.
mean? Yeah.
Yeah. I had about 15 minutes left and I just like, managed the dogs. The person didn't even know. The person didn't even know. Like,
Yeah.
and I was like, just managed the dogs. Idiot. He was young. And just like, okay, like let's, and just distract the person and my head. So I already had a dog that had a traumatic brain injury that was younger, and she could not be a therapy dog because she just developed all this anxiety and all these issues because of the brain injury. She had a lot of like pressure stuff in her head. So she got better over time, but she used to like co-facilitate our Therapy Dogs Australia courses. If anyone remembers Isabel, I used to call her Sharky because she'd just shark around the room and force people to rub her really hard on the head because it felt good for her. So that like and if you didn't do it hard enough, she'd just rub her head on you like as hard as possible.
Cutie.
She was pretty cute, but she couldn't be out. She got like really good at home, but she couldn't go out. But anyway,
Yeah.
so I bought Oliver to replace her, and then he knocked himself out in the session. I was like, great. So I finished the session, got in the car, drove straight to the hospital. The dog concussed itself. He stayed in there overnight so they could monitor him and rang me the next day and that sort of thing. But you're looking at the thing going like 15 minutes left. So that was my last session of the day. If it hadn't have been my last session of the day, I would have cancelled the rest of the day. But I would have still seen out that last session because you just go, well, it takes me half an hour to get to the emergency. What if it took me 45 minutes? Like what's the difference? Do you know what I mean? Like instead of panicking and going, oh my God, I go there and you can see the dog, like he was walking around. He was just dazed.
Yeah.
Just concussed. What else has happened to me recently? I can't remember actually. I think it might have been after I did your course, Olga. I worry about bloat. And we'll talk more about what bloat is, but bloat is my it's this little thing on my shoulder all the time because I've got all dogs that can be affected by bloat. I won't explain it now because I'll get Olga to explain it. But I did the course, and then I think it was after that, and I was like, I thought Nala had bloat after I fed her, and then she had a little bit of foam on her mouth, and she was walking around funny, like she was just funny, she only just eaten, but I was like, why are you walking around like that? Why? What's on your face? And I've like grabbed her face, and she's got this tiny bit of like foam, and I was like, why do you have that? What's that? Get in the car now. So I like watch her for 10 minutes, but I had clients coming to the farm and literally so I had to make the call early because they live about 40 minutes away. And so it was about half an hour before their appointment or whatever. So I had to make the call quickly to go, hey, I need to cancel your appointment because otherwise they've driven all the way here and I feel like shit. And then you feel, like you have to do the appointment or whatever, like where it's just harder. Anyway, they were so understanding, like the client, super, super understanding.
Again, what did you say?
I texted through our diary software. This is at like 7 something in the morning. And was like, I need to take one of the dogs to the vet. Blah, blah, blah. So before I forget, I always follow up. So if I've had to cancel an appointment or like that girl that I ended the appointment, I sent her regular updates on how the horse was going to the parent because I knew that she would be worrying, so I had to really be aware. And I've been lucky that like things have turned out okay, but there's going to be a time eventually when it doesn't, so which sucks. And obviously you have to navigate that, but I definitely have sent updates every time I've had to say I've got to take dog to a vet or I've got to do whatever. I've updated them, the client. So whether I think they care or not, I still do it because you don't know how much that affects someone, what they're thinking about it for the next week or two before they see you again. Anyway, I took Nala to the emergency vet. They're like, I think she's fine. I was like, okay. Bye.
Yeah. Always good to be sure, though. Get that peace of mind.
See you next week.
Like you're walking in. Hi, Sam.
Hey guys, it's me.
You're a regular.
Yeah, frequent flyer. Like, can you stamp my card? I should be due for my free coffee. I had Sunny. I was like in here and I had a gap. So I had my morning clients and then I had stuff to do and then I had afternoon clients and I'd been sitting here and I like, okay, turn around. Sunny like gets up, air quotes, just isn't using his back legs. I was like,
Gosh.
and I'm looking at things because I'm getting up because I'm like, oh, my client will be arriving soon. Also lives like an hour away. And I'm like, it's like 10 to 4 or whatever time, 10 to 3 or something like that. And I'm like, cool. Why are you not using your back legs, honey? What's going on? But what do you do? Like, checked him all over for a tick. What do you do? Like, I can't find a tick. Oh, okay. Well, I'll just have the appointment. And, you know, like that's something to me that says that's an emergency. So that was a quick, like, I'm so sorry. They're like on my street. I'm like, I'm so sorry. I've got to rush to the vet. Like, blah, blah. Again, they were fine and so understanding. And I sent them updates. So that's when he had Max like that neurological.
I was just about to say, I remember you telling me
That
about
was that day. And
And
then
he
it was
hasn't
like,
had any issues since, has he? It hasn't happened again?
no, they were like,
Yeah, it was very weird.
I was down at my regular and they were like, you need to come back and see the medicine specialist. But they did all these neurological tests and he was failing math, like terribly, like the back leg thing. And he was like, and I was like, oh my goodness.
Sorry.
They sent him home. He's old. He's like 12 or 13, Labrador. And so they send him home and they're like, you've got to come back and see the medicine specialist tomorrow, but it's probably a brain tumor, you know, like you've got to, like it's, and I'm like thinking we're not operating or treating a brain tumor, you know, so I'm like, I love you, Shani, like sleep
Last
with him on the
night
couch.
together, yeah.
He's like not standing properly and stuff. And I'm like, get up the next morning. He just gets up and just walks off normally. And I was like, God damn it, Sonny.
Far out.
I nearly put you down.
Way to scare his mum. Gosh.
Took him into the medicine specialist and she was like, what's wrong with the dog? And I was like, I don't know. Attention seeking? Damn it. She's like, you can give him a Panadol if you want, if he gets sore. I was like, okay. Okay. But yeah, I had to cancel someone's appointment there, or like on the street, because it was I'm not using my back legs issue. And then I had, we got Kiki out. So the same girl that the horse colicked, right? This is years later. We get Kiki out. I've got this Anatolian Shepherd, Olga. It's a livestock guardian dog.
Oh.
And so we get the dog out. We're gonna like take her in and have time around the goats. She's in training. She's only young. Blah blah. So she comes out and she's like loves people, like because she's young, I suppose. I don't know, or she's the worst guard dog in the world. It could be either. I'm not sure. So she comes out and she's just so besotted with this girl, and she's like, you know, really like excited, but trying to be like, she's a really big dog. So they do this funny, like, you know how they put their head down and they kind of like, you know, they just try and be, I don't know, small, and I don't know why they did that, but anyway, it's really cute. And she sits down and then she kind of puts her arms up like she's going to jump, but she's too big. She can't jump. She has never jumped in her life. She can't jump. One day maybe she'll figure it out, but she like puts her arms up, but then she just like falls over backwards because she has no proprioception. She's too big and heavy for this. Anyway, the screaming that comes out of this dog, I'm like, oh my God. So I grab her because obviously this is like a giant breed dog that's now in like screaming injured. So I'm on the ground with her, talking her through it. She's just biting my arm, like gently, but like biting my arm. I really know she's in pain. She's yelping, crying. And I'm thinking, oh my God, she just broke her tail. She just broke her tail. It's this curly tail. It's pretty cute. And I'm thinking, oh, she just broke her tail. But the girl is standing there like mortified because this dog is screaming, like proper yelp, 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 yelp. And I'm like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Okay. So I'm calming, trying to stay calm the dog down. Good girl, you're all right. You're okay. And she's biting on my arm. And I'm thinking, she's got a 700 and something PSI bite on this dog, mate. I hope she doesn't really seriously bite my arm in this situation, because
that would make things worse.
Things are going to get a lot worse if she chooses to snap all the bones in my arm. So I'm like, keep her calm, keep her calm. But she wasn't like, it was more of like a LLL kind of bite. Anyway, so we get out and like the girl's upset and, you know, obviously, but the dog stops crying and we go, okay, we'll just have a look. And I'm just gently touching her because I need to have a look at the tail and have a look at the leg, like what happened. We didn't know what had happened. But I don't want to like trigger the dog. I don't want to touch the hurt thing. Because I'm going to get bitten for starters. And it's very highly inappropriate for the setting that we're in right now. This is right at the beginning of the school session. And I'm like, just gently, you know, she calmed right down and she's settled down. She's okay. She hops up and I'm like, right. The girl is like, oh my God, did I do that to her? And I was like, no, not at all. Like, I think she just doesn't know her size. Like she must have been like 6 months old, you know, like just puppy, but massive. She was 50 kilos at 6 months. So yeah, so she's just, imagine like a 6-month-old puppy with that amount of weight behind it, they hurt themselves. So anyway, the girl's like, you know, upset, and I go, well, that's right. We'll just take her for a walk and just see how she's feeling. And we'll just keep an eye on her and you know, that sort of stuff. We're walking along and like, if you haven't, you got to Google, anyone who's listening, a Kangal, Kangal, or Anatolian Shepherd tail. It's this tight curl. Like it's I don't know any dog that has, that's like a pug.
Cute. Yeah.
Do pugs tails curl?
Yeah.
Whose
Yeah,
tail?
they've got
like
a corkscrew
flop over.
tail.
Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tight curl. It's like a breed trait thing. And she had a beautiful tail. Like it was like even the breeder and everyone, the breeders are like, look at her tail. We're walking along, this thing's flat out. And I'm like, oh my God. She broke it. Like she's broken her tail. Oh my God. I'm gonna have to take, I don't know what to do. I'm gonna have to take her to the vet. I can't get her in the car. What are we gonna do? Oh my God. So I'm walking along and, you know, but I had to repackage it for the girl because it's like, you know, she's okay. And like at the end of, you know, I'm doing all that like decatastrophizing stuff. Like at the end of the day, even if her tail, because she's like, look at her tail, it's so flat. And I'm like, that's all right. Even if it is broken, she's not going to die. Like, you know, she'll be fine. She's okay. Look, she's not hurt. And by that stage, I've been able to touch the whole tail and lots of, she was fine. And, you know, we're out walking around and we're walking through the paddock and stuff. And, as the time went on, this tail started to curl a bit, you know, and so we're like, look, I think it's all right. I think she heard it, but I think it's okay. And then like the next day or whatever, I texted her mum and was like, can you let her know the tail's back at full curl?
Oh, Kiki.
That's just a sample of the things that have happened in my time. Most of those are from like literally recently. There would be so many more that I can't even remember. But every time you add an animal or like a species or whatever, like obviously the risk increases. So if you just got one dog, that's going to be different. Like you're not going to be dealing with all this stuff all the time. Anyone that lives on farms or whatever property and all that sort of stuff, you're going to know, like, yeah, it's every day. It's every day you go out and first thing you do in the morning is check that everything's alive. Like you just go out and you're like, okay, goats, 1, 2, 3, 4. Are they standing up and eating? Great. Okay. Next paddock. Excellent. But you guys are going to come up against some things. So the bloat is something that is super important. We're going to talk about that. I want to talk about ticks. I want to talk about heat stroke, because these are some of the things, aren't they, Olga, that so I didn't realize some of the stuff about heat stroke that's in the course. I learned like quite a lot from the course, and I meant to say that before, already done first aid. And I've owned horses for like 8 years. And I've got 1 million dogs, and I still learnt quite a bit from the course. So can you talk to us a little bit? What is bloat? What is GDV? Talk us through.
Yes, so GDV stands for gastric dilatation and volvulus. So just a fancy word, just think about it as bloat. So what happens, it's more of a large breed dog problem because there's a lot of space in the chest and the abdominal cavity. What can happen is the stomach fills with either fluid, gas, or ingesta, which is just food, dilates, and then it literally twists on itself, and all the blood supply that goes to the stomach and also with the spleen, because the spleen's quite closely associated with the stomach, that blood supply gets cut off. So essentially, if you don't have blood supply, you don't have oxygen, and the stomach and the spleen can actually start to die off. It's an extremely, extremely painful condition that needs immediate, essentially surgical intervention. There's nothing that you can do at home to alleviate this problem. So recognizing the signs early is just so, so important. But yeah, essentially twisted stomach. If anyone's seen the movie Marley and Me, that's what happened to the dog. I think it was a Labrador.
Oh, I watched that so long ago, I can't really remember, but
Yeah. So that's exactly what happened in that movie. Twisted stomach, and the things die off very, very quickly. That's why it's such an urgent problem.
So I didn't realize, is this true? Like dogs can give themselves bloat from drinking water?
Yeah, it's really anything
I
that
didn't know
fills
that.
the stomach. And because there's just so much room in these bigger dogs like your Great Danes, your Retrievers, your Vizslas, all of them just have that extra space in their abdominal cavity, room for things to just twist. And there is what we call a prophylactic or preventative surgery that you can do when the dogs usually do it when they're young, especially if you're spaying your dog. You might as well do that at the same time. It's called a gastropexy, where essentially what we do is we stitch the stomach to the side of the abdominal wall. So if it's stitched in there, there's less chance for it actually twisting. So it's something that we usually recommend as a preventative surgery to the dogs that are predisposed. So usually it's large breed dogs, but I've also seen it in sausage dogs, like little Dachshunds, which has been really interesting. That's probably one of the only small breed dogs that I've actually seen this problem in.
And it's the chest, like, I mean, people can Google it as well, but it's like, is it where that chest sort of comes down a bit, and there's just more space.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Terrifies
me. So scary. Yeah, it's so scary.
Really, really scary. And the tissue can die off really quickly. That's the problem. And if it gets to a point where the symptoms have progressed and a lot of the stomach has died off, often you have to euthanize these dogs on the table because you can't resect an entire stomach. Your dog can't live like that. So if you recognize symptoms early and the tissue hasn't started to die off, then often you don't even have to cut anything out. You derotate the stomach. So first you decompress the stomach. So you try and get as much air and fluid out. Then we derotate the stomach, put it in its appropriate position, and then we stitch it. If the spleen's involved and the spleen's starting to die off, sometimes we have to take out the spleen as well. So big invasive surgery. And there are lots of post-operative, like after surgery complications that we need to monitor for as well. So scary thing.
Is the stitching surgery quite a simple one though, when it's for preventative?
It actually is. It is. Yeah, it is abdominal surgery, but it's just like a spay. But the surgery itself is quite basic. Yeah.
So they recover quite quickly.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting.
I just got Nala D-sex, and I meant to ask them to do that, and I forgot. But her recovery was keep her quiet for 2 weeks after her spaying. So would it be the same amount of time?
Yes. Yep. Because we're not cutting into the stomach, we're just essentially stitching the stomach to the side of the abdominal wall. So really, I'd probably say it's even more basic than a spay, a desexing.
Because I'm going to get Dougie desexed soon. So now I'm thinking maybe I should do that as well. Because he's brutal.
He's a boy, so his desexing surgery is like less complicated than the girl, but
yeah,
he's under a general. So I suppose, would you just make use of that time, Olga, or
it would be very surgeon dependent. It just depends on how comfortable the surgeon is. Sometimes when we're doing surgery that's more on the outside of the body, we don't want to do internal abdominal surgery at the same time.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So if it's a female dog, I'd say 100% do it at the same time, but male dog would be dependent on the surgeon. Yeah.
Okay.
Damn it, I'm so annoyed at myself that I literally got a D6 like a month ago. Anyway. And I meant to ask for that.
For those like listening as well, like with bloat, some of the signs probably worth going through?
Yes,
Because I feel
100%.
like I know a few of them, but like I wouldn't know.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So usually it will happen after being fed, especially let's say you feed your dog, taking them outside to go for a wee or a poo. If they start doing zoomies or getting overly excited, that's when often it can happen. You'll start to see them being really restless, really anxious, not able to settle. Often the main one that you see, you can actually physically see the abdomen bloating. Like if you touch their tummy and it feels very bloated, like an inflated water balloon, it feels very tight. That's one symptom. And then attempting to vomit or regurgitate and not bringing anything up is the big one.
That's what Nala was
Constantly
doing.
retching. Yeah. And just because if they're productively vomiting, if they're bringing up food, then it means the stomach's not twisted. But if they try and nothing's coming out, that's
it
a
means it's
big red
blocked.
flag.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly.
Does it need to be a big meal? Like how much could they eat for it or drink for that to be a problem? Like if they have a small amount, is it less likely? Like is it if they wolf an entire meal, it's more likely?
Yeah. That's when it happens, when they've had a big meal or a big drink of water. Or we've had a couple of situations where owners have fed their dogs like a big chicken carcass. That's for some. I've had a couple.
I knew
of
a
cases
lady
like
whose
that in the past.
Great Dane died that way,
Yeah.
and she fed him chicken carcasses all the time.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like you can feed it the same way and it never be a problem, and then it just takes one incident like that to just awful.
Oh, it's devastating.
This is one of the answers to when people ask if you feed your dogs twice a day or once a day. And even though there's like some research out there that's like, oh, you should feed them once a day, like that's better, or they live longer or whatever. I just can't do it because I'm like, I know, but they might, I don't know, like maybe they would live longer, but except they might die of bloat. So I'm not, I just split it.
I always
Dougie's
recommend feeding twice a day. Yeah.
3. He's got 3 a day because
three's fine too.
He just doesn't eat enough in one go. So he gets 3. He gets breakfast, dinner, and supper.
He's allowed to.
It works. It works for us, but bless him.
His little heart.
But yeah, I think splitting up meals, making sure that you don't let them run around after and like gorge themselves and have really rough play. Like I've got a greyhound, and greyhounds are one of the breeds that are predisposed, and he wolfs down his food. So the other thing that you can do if you have a dog that inhales their food is use something like a slow feeder. And then yes, you can let them out, but if they're a dog that likes to do zoomies, just put them on a lead and just do a short walk after, because you don't want to risk that happening. Yeah.
And so it's like if they've eaten maybe an hour wait time before they can do their zoomies, like what sort of
I'd
wait
probably
time?
give it even longer. I'd give it maybe 2 hours just to be sure. Like I have seen dogs, symptoms start to show like an hour and a half-ish after they've had this big meal and gone for a run, not immediately. And it depends on, every dog's got slightly different digestion in terms of how quickly things pass through. So I would say at least 2 hours minimum.
So I saw somewhere on the internet, some guy was like, so this might have been a guy that was like, feed your dogs once a day, like it's better for them, and then give them 4 hours before you do any exercise. And I was like, Lord help me, 4 hours. But at the time I was giving my dogs like 20 minutes, half an hour, because our routine was get up, feed the dogs, let that settle for 20, half hour, and then I'd go out and do the chores around the farm, and then that's when they go out and play and run around and whatever. And I was like, oh my God, they're gonna die. So I was like, how do you manage this? But we actually just flipped our routine around so that when we wake up, we go out and play, and we go and do all the chores and all the play, and then we come in and then they get fed, and then usually they sleep after that.
That's exactly what I do as well. Yeah, that's exactly my routine. We do the zoomies, we do all the big runs first, then we let the dogs settle, and then I feed them. I never do it the other way around.
Doug is the same. Like he actually won't eat until he's had a walk or a play or like moved his tummy in some way. And I
might as well let Dr. Olga know what breed he is.
A Groodle. Yeah, so with that routine he set himself.
Bless him. Mum, when will supper be? Just wondering. I'm just not that hungry right now. When are we going for our walk, and what time's supper, and what is supper? Okay, love you.
I don't want to
I'll be in my room. So cute. Yeah, and then the opposite for our nighttime, because I was like, how the hell am I going to give them all this time? This is ridiculous. Oh, my dogs are going to die. Which is where I go to straight away mentally. And yeah, but actually changing that routine, because I was like, but they're so hungry when they wake up. But they're not. They're fine. They're actually fine. They're very into the routine now. So, because I've always taken it seriously, but got this big, extra large breed, massive bloody dog. And I was like, oh man, look at that chest on it. Look at the chest on it. She's gonna get bloat.
She's a big girl.
It's worrying.
Does she inhale her food, Kiki?
No. No.
Interesting.
Their LGDs are picky and they're not highly food motivated. So it's not unlike her to leave, and they're eating meat. It's not unlike her to leave a bit behind, or she's slow to get started with it. A bit slow to get started. Oh, actually, so if they've been running around, should we give them a break? I always sort of try and make them settle down before I feed them after they've been running around.
Yes, yep, definitely. So I give the greyhound at least probably about half an hour, because if they're had a Zoom, they're panting and they're really sort of already a bit sort of on edge, and you feed them, there's still a risk there. So I give it at least half an hour. It's very dog dependent. If your dog settles quite quickly and they're snoozing on the couch after their run, then you go ahead and feed them. But if they're like, oh yeah, give me food, no, just let them settle, give them half an hour and then feed them.
And that's the perfect time to have your afternoon beer. So
so it works out for everyone.
It works out perfectly, because you just sit out in the patio with the dogs and they just have their calm down time, and you have your afternoon beer and then you feed them dinner. And that's it. End of day.
Amazing. That's a great routine. I love it.
Yeah. I don't have the same routine at breakfast. I think that would be inappropriate.
You got clients, yeah.
Yeah. That's coffee time. Actually, they have to wait for me to make my coffee, and then we go out and do the chores, and they run around, and because the run around on these dogs is ridiculous. Like, they got a lot of space, and they're locked up, and then I let them out into the greater house yards. So what's been in the house yard during the night is like wildlife and stuff. So every day
it smells
amazing. So they just go full noise, which is good. They have fun. Okay, so have we covered the signs? So Nala, I forgot that's what she was doing. She was retching. She was retching and she had a little bit of foam on her mouth. And I'm the kind of person, like, I can look at her abdomen and be like, is that the same as what it was? Like, I get really funny about, are they all like sides being symmetrical? I'm really funny about, like, is that the same? I can't really see. I don't trust, like, I just can't trust it. So I just had to call it.
It's always good to get it
peace
checked.
of mind.
Yeah. And you won't always see it. Sometimes, because the stomach is so far up underneath the ribs, a dog can have bloat and not actually have that typical kind of bloat of the tummy that you would expect. So that's why it's always important, if you've got one of the breeds that are predisposed, really any large breed dog, and they're doing those symptoms, 100% get it checked out. The other thing, there is a difference between bloat, the GDV bloat, and a food bloat. So we often have dogs come in that have gorged themselves, they've gotten into the dry food and eaten, let's say, half a bag of dry food. What will happen in that situation is, especially if it's dry food, the food will expand in the tummy and they might actually look bloated. Usually in that situation, I would still get it checked out, but it's not a life-threatening emergency, because the stomach usually doesn't twist. And in that situation, you've got a couple of options. One, the vet might chat to you about making your dog vomit to bring that up. Issue with trying that is you could initiate a bloat, because obviously making a dog vomit is these forceful contractions. You're giving the stomach an opportunity to actually twist. So that's not something that I usually recommend, but I have seen some vets do it. Number two is you can admit them into hospital, get them on fluids, and just essentially get the gut moving and hope that you'll have more and more digestion and everything will pass through. Or three, you just monitor them. So very dog dependent, but yeah, there's a difference between food bloat and then the twisted stomach bloat. The food bloat is not a life-threatening emergency.
And that's only if you know that they've gotten into half a bag of
Exactly.
kibble.
Yeah, most people call them back, oh crap, my puppy's gotten into the entire bag of cat food or something like that. And we'll talk them through options there. But thankfully that usually is not a life-threatening emergency.
Yeah, it's good to know the difference. Yeah.
So I didn't add this part of the story on, but when Oliver concussed himself, he was really young. I took him to hospital, left him there. They fed him kibble and I feed him raw food. And so they fed him kibble and they rang me in the morning and they were like, because they were like, oh, you can come pick him up. And I was like, oh, thank God, you know, like he probably doesn't have brain damage. Great. So, and then they ring me back 20 minutes later or whatever. No, it wouldn't have been that long. It was like shortly after. Anyway, this is like 9 years ago. And they're like, oh, he's just drinking a lot of water. So we're gonna, can we do a test on his kidneys? And I was like, oh my God, yes. Like, okay. Anyway, they gave him back to me. The test came back clear. Yep, come and get him. They gave him back to me and he was bloated. Like he was tiny. He was like a puppy. He was like 11 or 12 weeks old. Like his tummy, like you could see it. I took photos. It was hilarious. Like this bloat in his tummy. But because they'd fed him kibble, he'd never had it before. Like he was weaned onto raw. He'd never had it before. And so he's like smashed it and then been like, oh, Weet-Bix, thirsty, drank a heap of water and he literally just pooed all day. But he was fine. I was like, oh, I probably should have mentioned this. Literally never had, like, if you imagine, like, you've never had that kind of food ever. Like, he was like, yay, ow, my tummy.
He caused himself a little bit of a food bloat.
He really did. He really did. I was like,
he was just having a day.
That was just an act. That was just a communication error. It was no one's fault. And it was like you said, exactly like you said, it was like not a problem at all. It was like, oh, he's just full. Like, just don't let him run around, you know, like he's fine. Yeah. Oh God. Okay. So the reason I think it's important to talk about bloat is because it's so common. People don't know about it. People aren't feeding out of slow feeder bowls, etc. You can Google it, but you can do Dr. Olga's course. There's lots of information in there to get you started on preventing bloat and how to identify bloat and what to do. But like I said, I literally had this happen as someone's arriving. So, or 30 minutes or whatever before someone was due to arrive, my first client for the day, and I had 3 clients back to back. So because I had noticed the symptoms half an hour before, that is go time, because if I don't cancel these appointments now, because the other clients don't get told, like, I've got an emergency vet appointment. The other clients just get our generic, like, your therapist is sick text message. It's just a template and it just goes through. They don't care if we're sick. But, you know, whenever I'm like in an emergency, I always say if it's a vet emergency, I'll let people know because people care about the animals. Anyway, so if I had have waited, and I actually had this conversation with the client when I saw them next, the parents, and they were saying the same thing. And we actually had, and like they have a son that's a teenager, and they were like, we had this conversation with him too. That was around, it actually became this like real point of view and empathy thing, because they have dogs. And so like it was like because they arrived and I was like, thank you so much for understanding, you know, like da 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 da. And they were like, oh no, we understand, and that's what we would do for our dogs, and da da da. I'm really glad to hear that they're okay, and all that stuff. Anyway, but the point being, if you don't recognize the signs early enough, if that was a bloat for Nala, if I saw those signs, didn't do anything, so I got all his clients, like, oh, what am I going to do? And then you get either halfway through that first appointment and you go, I actually think she's not all right. Like, I actually think, oh my God, like, and now you've got a much more difficult decision to make. Or you don't realize the symptoms, don't notice what's going on. Clients arrive, they're playing with the dogs and whatever because you don't realize what the go is, and then all of a sudden the dog becomes like catastrophically unwell in someone's session. Those are all things that we're trying to avoid. So most of you probably are, some of you are actually working from home, so lots of people that are. So yeah, it's one of those things just to be really aware of, because it is one of the big ones that can escalate very quickly, and it is fatal a lot of the time. So yeah,
Yeah.
best to be
100%.
aware.
Scary
Yeah.
stuff.
Heat stroke, Dr. Olga. I learned so much about heat stroke. I thought I knew about heat stroke. I did
Stroke
not
is
know.
scary. Yeah. I think a lot of people think heat stroke is 30+ degree days. Someone's been dumb enough to take their dog on a 5K run, but it's really not. It happens in like the mid-20s, even low 20s, and especially the dogs that are your squish face breeds, your Frenchies, your bulldogs, your pugs. I've seen heat stroke in, I think it was 19-degree weather, where an owner took their dog just to the local cafe, was having a conversation, and within 10 minutes, this dog is like in 19-degree weather. Yeah, so for anyone that's got a squish face breed, I will tell them, do not walk your dog in the middle of the day, morning or really late in the evening when it's cool, because your squish face dogs, they're already born with anatomy that isn't working in their favor. A lot of them are breathing through pretty much a straw. So you just exacerbate that by letting them get even just a little bit excited in those temperatures. It's a disaster. And a lot of people just really don't realize that.
So that 19-degree, whether that was a Brachy dog?
Yes, yep, it was a French bulldog. Yeah.
Oh.
Where that's going to impact people is when we are, so people working in schools with their dogs, where like break times, etc. It's all school is all in the middle of the day, basically. And there's lots of kids and there's lots of activity that's going on. And the other thing is when we actually have this scenario in one of our ethical dilemmas in our courses that we do, where it's like your dog's getting hot, but you've signed up. So one of the issues that we've got, Olga, is that people will sell their service. So they'll go, okay, so I'm a therapy dog and handler team, and I offer student wellbeing focusing on this goal, and we come and we do an hour and a half presentation program activity for 4 weeks, or blah. So the school pays you whatever fee and you've commit to this hour and a half on a Wednesday afternoon program with the dog, which is great, right? But our ethical dilemma is like, okay, so you're half an hour in, the dog seems hot. What do you do? Like, what do you do now? Because you've got a financial, like you've committed, you're on a contract. There's every chance the teachers have left you there with 20-something kids that are in this program, blah, blah, blah. What are you going to do to navigate out of this? And I think that is a really important thing for us to understand, the difference between the dog's getting hot to the dog's got heat stroke. And it's now, it's not time, because the answer usually is trying to navigate. So the kids have an expectation of the dog, right? So the kids are like, hell yeah, like I'm throwing this toy for this dog, like for the rest of my life. Like that's it.
Yeah, over and over. And the dog's not going to tell them that, look, I'm done here. The dog's just going to keep doing it. That's the thing.
That's it. And I've worked with like Sunny, my old lab that was talking about before, like that's what he was like. Like I had to really manage him. Even taking him to the beach, I could only let him go for 20 minutes or he'd pull up lame the next day, like on the sand. But yeah, stuff like that. So the kids have got an expectation. The school's got an expectation. Everyone's trying to razz up the dog. The dog is already heavily panting. You're outdoors. You can't just cool down. Like it's not like you can just throw the dog in the car and chuck the AC on. Like it's if you were just out at your cafe, et cetera, et cetera. So how do we know the difference? What are the major warning signs? When is it like uh-oh? How do we avoid it? What do we do?
Yeah. So I'd say if there's just a bit of panting and you see that your dog's getting a bit restless, that's probably when I not necessarily would call it, but I would put them in the shade, give them some water. You can even gently hose them down with just room temperature water. You definitely don't want to use icy water, because that's going to constrict the vessels and make it harder for your dog to actually lose the heat, because the only way dogs lose heat is by panting. They don't sweat like we do. So that's the most efficient way. So pop them in the shade.
The reason that Max is reacting like that is because she hasn't done the course. If you just heard Max's little like, yes. But I wasn't reacting because I already knew that, because I've done the course. So I'm just pointing that out. Sorry, Dr.
No, all good. That's a really good point. Pop them in the shade, give them some water. You can gently hose them down. And then if they settle within about 10 to 15 minutes, then just leave them alone. Probably get the kids to take a break and just monitor the dog, which I understand might be a little bit difficult if there are already expectations of this animal and from you. In terms of when it's becoming a heat stroke, and I teach you how to examine what normal gums look like, but with a heat stroke, often you'll have what's called injected gums. And what that means is brick red gums. So if you lift your dog's lip, normally it should be a nice kind of healthy pink color. If you lift them and they're brick red, and then if you push down on them and the color comes back really quickly, that's a sign that look, big red flags, we probably need to get straight to a vet. But the thing is, the importance of heat stroke is actually cool before you get to a vet, because let's say it's a half an hour drive to get to the vet. If you don't cool them first, the signs could continue getting worse and worse. So that's one of the important things to know is don't take them to a vet straight away. You actually need to cool them first, wait a little bit, get them in the car once you've cooled them, crank the aircon, and then get them to a vet. Because a lot of the time you're driving half an hour plus to get to a vet clinic. So that's the importance of doing first aid measures yourself.
And
a
when
lot
you
of
say,
people...
sorry.
No, go for it.
I was just going to say, when you say cool them first, how do you know that you've kind of reached that? How do you know that you've cooled them?
Yeah, so the symptoms, I don't think the injected gums will resolve back to normal. You might still have those symptoms present, but as long as they're not getting worse, so I would cool them for about 10 minutes and then get them straight in the car.
Yeah.
So you're not waiting for the signs to get a lot
So you're not waiting for like
better.
a finishing point. You're just like, let's just get something going.
Exactly. You're implementing first aid. You've done all that you can from an owner point of view. You get them in the car. You can even keep spraying them with cool water, crank on the aircon, because using like an evaporative fan technique, which is just aircon, is going to be really effective. So you want to cool them with room temperature water. Cool water is okay, but you just don't want to use icy water. Get the fan on them and then get them straight to a vet.
I remember hearing someone talk about like putting like almost ice packs with like maybe wrapped in a towel or something. But now, like from what you're saying about icy water, that's probably not a good idea.
Yeah, so if you put a wet towel on them, which I see a lot of owners do, you're trapping the heat.
Yeah.
That's the thing. The heat's not going to escape. Yeah.
You almost killed your dog, Maxine. You almost killed your dog.
I know.
It's just really not an effective way. Yeah, it's something that you think instinct-wise is going to work, but that's
I'm so sure I learnt that somewhere though. Like from doing like working in a kennels first aid course. I'm so sure that was...
No.
Can we find out where I got this myth from? Because when I was doing the course, I was like, I had it in my head, don't try and cool them down. Where did I get that?
I think maybe that's come from what we used to say is don't cool them too much. We don't want their temperature to go from up here to suddenly drop to down here. That's kind of the only thing I can think of is not...
Is there a human first aid reason? Is there a human version of like, I don't know. I had it in my head. Like when I did the course, I was like, oh, do cool them down. Oh.
And cool them before you even try to get to a vet. Yeah, that's...
Yeah, maybe, it's like really
something to do with like shock or I don't know
where I got, but I like when I heard, like when you think about it, you're like, yeah, it makes sense to cool them down, but I have something in my pathways in my brain where I've stored some kind of like information about something that was like, don't do whatever. And I mixed it up somehow, whatever. I don't know what happened, but yeah, when I did the course, I was like, oh, okay, do cool them down. Okay, save their life.
110%. And still, even if they seem okay, still get them to a vet, because anytime you've got heat stroke, you can have multiple organ systems affected. Like the most common thing that can happen in a severe heat stroke is acute kidney injury, and that can be fatal in itself. So even if your dog seems okay, especially if you've got a long drive and you think, hey, actually they've calmed down, you still want to get them checked. And often we'll still hospitalize them, check their organ function, and just make sure they're okay.
Sorry, now my brain's just going through all kinds of scenarios. If there's like a pool nearby, is that an appropriate thing to put them into, like gently, or is that still too cold?
If it's like a kiddie pool,
like if you can like hold them, but just like not submerge them fully, but like get them.
Should you hold their head under the water in the pool?
Never.
No. Okay. Well, drowning is covered in the course, so if Maxine panics,
reduce stress,
submerges her dog, throws her dog,
just get the hose. The hose should be fine.
I'm like trying to go through in my mind different cooling methods.
Okay, but
Yeah.
Kiki, the LGD, I've got shell pools for her. And she steps in
Yeah.
because she tries to. She's like a horse. She splashes the water up on her.
Yeah.
And she likes it. Weird, man. She likes it if I hose her on her lady area.
Oh.
And her, the skin on the tummy and the lady area. She loves it. She stands there for ages. She loves it. And she gets in the horse buckets and she tries to get the water on her. So I had a shell pool that actually filled up with dirt for her to dig in, but she doesn't dig in there. She doesn't want to. But anyway, I filled it up with water now and I got her another one. But she steps in it and just stands in it with her feet. So she must be cooling through her feet. Is that a thing?
Yes,
Because they sweat through their feet.
Yeah, it's not, I mean, obviously it's not as effective as them panting. So panting is the most effective way. But yeah, if you've got a shell pool, fill it up with water and get your dog to just sit in it for 5 to 10 minutes. Yeah, that's actually a really good way.
Excellent.
I've just got a lot to process here.
I just remember that Sonny got heat stroke when I was at a dog park once, like 10 years ago. And it was from someone throwing the toy over and over and over.
Yeah.
And he couldn't stop himself. He tried to lay down like where the water was. And then I was like, this is too much. Like, it's too much. And I had to pick him up and carry him to the car. And I lived like 2-minute drive from the park. It's a big 5-hectare dog park down at Redcliffe. And I took him home and he went in the shell pool and cooled down. But I should have taken him to the vet based on all of this information. He's lucky to be alive. You're very lucky, Sonny, to still be alive.
Oh,
oh my God. But I knew like just the amount of throwing of the toy. But because someone had one of those ball launchers and I don't have them because why does the ball need to go that far? But someone had the ball launcher and so he'd never experienced like I'm going to run 150 meters for the ball every time. I'm probably exaggerating, but you know what I mean? Like
it was so exciting.
It's like 10 meters if I throw it. We can do that 100 times because I'm like, the ball launcher dude's like, it's 1 kilometer down the road. Go and get it. Anyway, okay. Super, super important. I reckon that's going to be one of the very, very common ones, especially like we're all in me and Olga are in Queensland.
It's pretty hot out my way too, actually, because I'm more like inner, Western Sydney area. So yeah, we get some pretty high temperatures too. It's just been a bit.
Be careful.
Yeah.
What about people burning their pads on their feet? Does that happen? Do people actually? Because I see people out there, and I'm like, actually, a long time ago, someone had their dog I was driving and someone had their dog at the lights. It was a really hot day. It was like in the middle of the day. And I could see that the dog was like, it was being funny with its feet. And then it started barking at them. And I like rolled down my window and I was like, his feet are hot. And they were like, abused me. Like, okay, well, your dog's feet are hot. So bye.
People can be very touchy.
It's a long time ago. But anyway. Tell us about that. What happens with that?
So essentially they get thermal burns on their paws and paws because they're using them to essentially walk. You can't really tell a dog to, like if you get thermal burns, there's not that much that apart from pain relief and waiting, there's not that much we can really do. So you see a lot of people, you do the test where you put your own foot on the ground, make sure that you can essentially tolerate the heat for at least 30 seconds and then that's fine. But yeah, it'll cause thermal burns. And there's you can't really put cream on them because they're literally either going to lick it off or they're just going to walk it off. So it's not something we see too commonly. I think most owners are pretty good with that sort of stuff, but thermal burns definitely can happen if you're taking your dog in sort of 30+ degree heat and you're not checking things first. Yeah.
Do you actually have a question about that? Because you can get the little dog shoes.
Yes. Yep, the little booties.
The little booties.
Yeah.
Are they do they hold trap heat? Do they make it hotter for dogs?
Great question. I would never have thought about that.
That's actually a pretty good question. Yeah. I mean, they're like dog shoes. So I mean, if it's hot enough that you feel like you need booties, though, I probably just wouldn't take your dog out for a walk. That's the thing. I think most people use booties, like let's say your greyhounds that are more prone to corns, the booties help protect them in that situation. It can be a lot less painful for them to walk if they've got booties, but I wouldn't be, I guess, purchasing booties if you're thinking that you're going to take your dog for a walk in the heat, because if you're already thinking that, then you just shouldn't take them out for a walk. That's the thing.
I was actually looking at them because we get like so many like bindies and things this time of the year. They're just everywhere, everywhere. Like I'm getting them like in my hair, and I don't even know how I get them in my hair. And so like Dougie's walking along and he's like, oh, like he's been groomed now, so they don't really get stuck in his fur since he's had like his paws groomed. But I was like looking at the little dog boots going like, well, then you can run on the fields, because the moment he's stuck with the pavement and looking all sad. Anyway, but I was
You
worried
probably
it was
could do it for that
hot.
reason. No, you could do it for that reason. It's not going to make them hotter.
Yeah, okay. Sam.
Because Dougie can't go for a walk out in the field because he's going to get bindies.
So sharp.
So
they do hurt. No, they're
hurt.
buggers. Yeah,
I'm just teasing you. I made Max the host, so now I can't share things because she doesn't know how to make me co-host or let me share things. But anyway, I've got this photo up. So our teams often get those little booties because they wear them into hospitals and nursing homes so that the dogs don't accidentally scratch people, and it gives them a little bit of friction on slippery floors.
I think I've just done that.
Great question, Max, about trapping heat. Something to be aware of, because these this is a photo of one of our teams, their dogs. These boots, I think they're like pretty good.
Bella and Coda.
Yeah. This is Sharon's dogs, Bella and Coda. So they wear them because they go into a nursing home. And yeah, but these look like they've got like a breathable.
Yeah, they look like good quality fabric.
They look like good quality ones that are breathable.
I need to ask Sharon where she got these from.
The brand is Roughwear, but I haven't looked at them, so I don't know. But that's a great question. But maybe we don't know yet, and everyone just be conscious and aware that if you're putting boots on the dogs, to just be aware of heat stroke. Signs and symptoms. Is there a pinch test for dehydration for dog? Like on horses, you can do a pinch test on their neck and see if they're dehydrated. Is there a way to tell on dogs? Is it the gums?
Is it the same?
Yes. Yeah. So you essentially lift the skin up normally, and it can be a little bit tricky in an older dog or an older cat that's already hasn't got great elasticity to the skin. But if you lift the skin, it really should jump back to place quite quickly. But if you lift it and it's staying up, that's definitely one sign of dehydration. If you lift their lips and you touch their gums and it's really sticky and dry, that would be the second sort of symptom of dehydration. So they're the two things that you can do. Lift the skin on the back of the neck. If it stays up for quite a while, or it takes sort of 3 to 4 seconds to actually go back down, definitely dehydration. And then you touch their gums and they're quite dry, that as well. Number 3, you can actually, so if you lift the lip, touch the gum, normally when you touch it, it goes white and then the pink color returns. Normally that should take about 1.5 to 2 seconds. But if you poke it and it stays white for more than 2 to 3 seconds, that's a sign of more severe dehydration. If the color takes quite a bit of time to come back, then that's sort of a red flag that, we've probably got to take our dog to the vet.
Oh, actually, I have another question on this. So, so with dehydration, it's just really interesting because I feel like this is another Dougie thing, but I feel like I have to encourage him sometimes to drink enough water. Like I don't think he always like.
You're gonna give him bloat, Maxine. He's gonna get bloat from over drinking the water.
Is that a thing that like dogs might be dehydrated and not like think to be hydrating themselves enough during summer? Or is that just not a thing?
I think that's a lot of owners always are calling, my dog's not drinking enough. Your dog or cat will be able to, their body regulates that sort of thing. So there's not that disconnect where, okay, I need to drink more water. Your dog will just automatically do it. So, and it also depends on the diet. If they're on a wet food diet or they're not on a dry food diet, that will sort of determine how much they drink. So usually dogs and cats will know. It's not something that you have to encourage them to do. Their body will just know and send the signals that I'm thirsty, I need to drink. So, because like we do have a lot of owners calling and saying, oh, I've tried to syringe feed my dog water and all that sort of stuff, and definitely not what you need to do. Their body can regulate all that themselves. Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah.
You might accidentally drown your dog if you do that. So just be careful.
Well, I mean,
forcing him to drink.
I've actually seen people who, it's more so with cats, try and syringe feed them water when they're unwell, and they what's called aspirate, where they inhale the water, and then you end up causing problems in the lungs. So big no for, especially in cats. For dogs, if they're unwell and you feel like you need to syringe them, just get them to a vet.
Yeah, I mean, I've never really had the issue where I'm like overly concerned, but sometimes I'm just wondering, like, surely you like want to drink by now. Surely you need some water.
The body will do its thing.
No, no, I don't. I'm like, okay.
I'll actually have a tea with my supper.
A nice latte.
Thank you.
Some ice bone broth would be great. Thanks.
Some of those teas that Narelle told us to make. I always forget which ones they were, but
Puka brand.
I'll have a tea, thank you. That's handy. I didn't know that about the pinch test. Very good. Okay. Have we covered off heat stroke? Does everybody feel sufficiently prepared for heat stroke? It is serious. It's very important, and I think it's going to be one of the more common ones. And we need to know, we need to prevent it, and then we need to know if you've accidentally already gone too far. We need to know when it's like, okay, go time. We need to cool this dog down. We need to get him to the vet.
Actually, yeah, while on that, just quickly though, so Olga, you were saying obviously that Bracky dog was struggling in 19 degrees.
Yep.
But that heat stroke can happen in like the early 20s and mid 20s. Like, I mean, I suppose we know this as dog owners, well, whatever, but a lot of people know this as dog owners of, you know, where the limit is, and you can probably feel that. But I suppose in summer, managing, like even going out at night can be really hot, and dealing with walks. So you should be sort of aiming for under 24 degrees generally anyway, or something around there, or? It's
hard. I think there are no sort of hard and fast rules, and it's dependent on the dog, the anatomy of the dog, any other health concerns, if it's obese. There are so many factors. So I think
you just have to really suss out your dog.
Yeah, exactly. But really, like, if you want hard and fast rules, it's really early in the morning or really late at night. Don't let them do zoomies if it's warmer, just gentle lead walks, and that should be absolutely fine. And make sure I always bring one of those portable, foldable, like water bowls, and a little water bottle just in case.
It's just very heavy, isn't it? Okay, so I think toxins is something else to be aware of. I pulled out a plant after doing the course. I had one of those horrendous plants, and it was massive.
What did you have?
And we had to the one. Hang on, let me look at the. Yeah.
Well, they're scary. That's one of my biggest fears. I didn't even realize we had one when we moved up to Queensland, because you don't really see them that much in Melbourne. And I'm looking outside and I can see Cracker, my Cavalier, sniffing something, and I'm like, holy crap, that's a cycad. Get the dogs in, and we called someone out straight away to get rid of the cycad, because they are deadly. Like, this plant causes liver failure, and if your dog starts to show symptoms, I don't want to put a number on it, but
Maxine's face.
Yeah, CYCAD, cycad, or they're also called sago palms.
Let me.
It kind of looks like the top of a palm tree.
I'm gonna pull up a picture. Are you googling it?
Yeah, really thick trunk and almost like fern, like palm tree leaves. And it's the seeds that are the most toxic part, and it's a death sentence. We don't have many dogs survive.
Is that it? The sago? Or
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So how do I look up where it like exists, like in Australia?
I think it's everywhere.
Yeah.
Like I've seen Australia.
I've seen them at the Botanic Gardens in Melbourne even. But a lot more common up here in Queensland. Like, I'm seeing them when I walk the dogs around the suburbs. I'm seeing a lot of them in people's yards.
Yeah, I see them everywhere. Yeah. I didn't realize it was so deadly.
Mine is like maybe like 50 of those in one big plant.
Yeah, they can be huge.
Massive, right in our front garden thingy. And I was like, I did the course, and then I, like, to my partner, I was like, I'm fucking cutting this tree down. I don't care. Like, I'm cutting this tree down. But it was a chainsaw job. And look, I can use the chainsaw, but it's not without serious insult or injury to something. So I just get it out, and then someone comes along and does it for me, so I don't hurt anything. So anyway, the cycad came down. It's trying to bloody grow back, so I've poisoned it now as well. But it was this massive big thing, and I was like, how is anything alive? And we put it straight. We never do this, but we put it straight in the trailer and took it straight down to the dump on that day. We always burn shit. Like, we always just leave things, let them die and burn stuff because we're on property. And I was like, get this murderous plant off this property. It's been there for like 4 years.
I've done the same thing. Yeah.
Or the other thing that you've got to make sure, if you do get someone to remove it, don't let them like break it up into mulch and leave it there. That's still going to be toxic. Because when we had the guys come out, they offered, okay, we can chop it and then almost like mulch it up. And I was like, no, that's still extremely dangerous.
Gotta go.
Yeah, the whole thing has to go. Like, it just one or a couple of seeds are enough to cause liver failure. And to be honest, I don't think I've actually had a dog survive a cycad toxicity. It's brutal. It's like lilies for cats. So if anyone here owns cats as well, lilies are a death sentence for cats. It only takes a little bit of pollen to drop on the fur they groom, and if you don't intervene straight away, that's a death sentence. That's like cycads for dogs.
Oh my God, so scary.
Yeah.
I see them everywhere.
Yeah.
So it's the seeds
that are the most toxic
that
part.
are the most, but
the
everything
whole plant's toxic. Yeah, exactly.
Like, sniffing is even just.
Sniffing's probably okay, but
it's
just
spiky.
Ingesting any part of the plant, which is usually the seeds, because it's not that common that a dog's going to try to bite the leaves, but yeah, it's the seeds.
Well, puppies do.
Yeah.
Puppies bite stuff. Yeah, because but it's spiked me. It's like it's not that fun to kill it. Like, it was not that fun. It was like, so it could spike a dog. It didn't have like massive, I don't think it had massive big spikes on or anything, but I remember I had to put like gloves on. Like, I was like, it's outrageous.
Quite bristly, like it's uncomfortable. Yeah.
I was not impressed. It was a big job that I did about 25% of. I was not impressed. So toxins, it's hard to know. We won't go into like what they all are. We obviously know we've got snakes, we've got cane toads, we've got cycads. Signs and symptoms. How do we know that the dog has come across a toxin? And it's like it's go time. Like, it's not a watch and wait time.
Yeah, so it'll be really dependent on the toxin and whether or not you actually witnessed the dog ingesting anything. So if you physically witnessed your dog ingest something, again, and I run through all this in my course, there are certain steps that you need to take. But if you're unsure, you can either call your vet, let them know what they ate, how long ago they ate it, if they're on any sort of pre-existing medications that might actually interfere with whatever they've eaten, and then they'll give you advice on what to do. Sometimes the advice will be bring a dog straight down, we'll try to make it vomit. Other times, if it's been like a mild toxicity, you might be given the option of just monitor. Like, for example, if your dog's eaten just a little bit of milk chocolate, depending on the size of the dog, we might say, no, you don't have to rush down. Because a lot of people think that inducing vomiting is a very benign thing that we do easily and doesn't come with any complications. So a lot of owners will say, look, I'll just bring my dog in for you guys to make it vomit, but that also comes with risks. So we don't do that lightly. We want to make sure that we'll only make a dog vomit if it actually needs it. If you're in a situation where you're starting to see symptoms, let's say vomiting, diarrhea, tremors, even things like seizures, it will really depend on whether or not you think your pet's had access. So yeah, it really depends on the timing, what you've seen, and then the severity of the symptoms that you're seeing. But if you're unsure, just call your vet, or a really good resource is the Animal Poisons Hotline. I think they're Australia-wide, and they're literally free to call between, I think it's 8 or 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. If it's after hours, I think they just charge like an $80 after hours fee, but they've got a team of vets and toxicologists. So a lot of the weird toxins or weird human medications that vets may not necessarily know about, if you call them, they'll give you the most accurate information and guide you as to whether or not you need to see a vet. So they're a really good resource to have on hand.
So I think because with toxins, dosage is a thing, isn't
100%.
it?
Yeah.
So they can calculate that sort of stuff for you.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, for example, one Panadol tablet will be deathly for a cat, but for a dog, we often use Panadol therapeutically. But it's different if a dog's gotten into like an entire box of Panadol, that's a different story. So a lot of them will be dose dependent. Some of them will say, okay, I don't care how much your dog's eaten, you need to come straight to a vet. So it's always toxin dependent. Yeah.
So we won't go into a heap more detail for the rest of the stuff, but I'll just list off some of the things that are in the course. The course is so thorough, but hopefully this is like given people an opportunity to understand why it's important to know this stuff. So hopefully, like even the conversation that we've had now, I can see Maxine's jaw like dropping, and
I know,
I'm
I'm processing so much. I'm like,
I know,
let me
I'm
get
having
these
like
calls right now. I'm
traumatic.
like, Dougie's right with me here, and I'm like, I need to do this too.
Yeah, literally. Even just like a peace of mind thing, but I literally had this massive fuck off cycad in my garden. And I was like, I wonder if I've got any poisonous plants for ages. Like I was like, but I'm not going to go around and like take photos of all the plants, put them in my plant app. I can't be bothered. So I just do that to the ones that are dying and see what they need sometimes. So I was like, when I did, I was like, that I literally have one of those in my garden, and it's huge. So it had to die. It's had to die. I murdered it. So thank you to Dr. Olga that my dogs are now safe from the plant. But there's stuff in here, including, I mean, what we discussed initially about knowing when is your dog like at their normal self, just being observant. This is something that comes up as a dog trainer. This is something that comes up all the time, that people can sometimes not really take that much notice of what their dog's like when they're normal. So even if it's a behavioral thing that they're coming to a dog trainer for, like they still sort of can't think about or explain what the dog's normally like in certain situations. But the health thing that's a thing too. So just being aware of your dog's baseline, so you know that any changes to the baseline are something to take note of. Sometimes those things, they happen over time, but these more emergency situations are things that are going to be happening more rapidly usually, but they might be more subtle. So you just need to be fully aware of what your dog's normal baseline is. In the course, there's all sorts of things, some of the stuff that we've talked about, but the toxins, it goes into cane toads, it goes into things like pufferfish, stuff like that. There's downloadable posters and that sort of thing, so that you can have those on hand. And like I said, like I can just pull this up anytime. Like I'm looking at it right now. I can just pull it up anytime. It's saved in my browser thingy-majiggy. Seizures, I really enjoyed learning about, like, what do you need to actually do if your dog has a seizure? Because none of us know that our dog's going to have a seizure until they have their first seizure. So you don't know what you're going to do. There's things in there about how to handle it if a dog, breaks a bone, transporting them safely, car accidents, all sorts of things around, like, having a muzzle, etc., on hand. Like when Kiki was biting me, when she like broke her tail, that's a really normal response from dogs. So just being aware as well that when they get injured, or something like that happens, they will do stuff like that. That's totally not unusual at all. Bandaging stuff, we mentioned already. So choking, there's a Heimlich, a dog like Heimlich maneuver thing in the course as well. So if the dog's choking on something, like a ball or a Kong or something like that, it's like shows you how to like actually dislodge that, which is crazy. Electrocution, I'll just give you a little spoiler alert. If your dog chews through a cord and electrocutes themselves, you have to turn off the power before you touch anything.
Oh my gosh, I don't know that I'd remember to do that.
Don't touch them. Oh my gosh, don't touch them.
I would go straight into panic and be like, oh.
Right. She's saying this in the course, and I'm like, my first reaction was like, oh, duh. But then I was like, as if I'd turn off the power. There's no way I would turn off. I would be like, we're all electrocuted.
Yeah, we're all going together.
Yeah. I was like, yeah, that is pretty important to remember that. But I think about it because when you're talking about it, because I'm like, are people really going to not like unelectrocute? And I was like, that's you. She's talking to you. and Max,
You're
apparently.
the target market.
You're the target market for this comment. But I sometimes just think about it. Like, I'm like, if there's an electrocution, turn off the power, get everything away first before you touch it. I just sometimes pops into my head. I don't know. It just had this like effect on me where I was like,
because you really know you need to remember that.
but
It's good,
because
but you
at
want it to
first-
be instinct. Like you want that
Yeah.
training that I give to actually, okay, first thing, you don't panic, you just instinct. That's the thing. And that's the whole point of the course is I want those decisions to be on your mind right away and you're not kind of scrambling or we have so many people get onto Dr. Google, especially like things like toxins and poisons. I've had a couple of people Google, how do I make my dog vomit? And I had a horrendous case. It was a Westie that had swallowed a fish hook. An owner went onto Google and looked up some pretty awful advice. And the advice was to give your dog salt. So he gave it salt with ice cream. No vomit, gave it more salt. No vomit, gave it more salt. By the time it presented, he had caused a salt toxicity where the dog was seizuring. So it had two problems. It had the fish hook in its stomach, plus it had salt toxicity. And the thing is with the salt toxicity is you can't fix it quickly. That's something that you correct over potentially up to 24 hours, especially if they're showing symptoms. So that's why that was the whole point of the course. I just see so many owners, and it's not that they're trying to obviously hurt their dogs. It's that basic instinct that they're just Dr. Googling or making the wrong decisions. And I want the course to make those decisions the correct ones. So that's the whole point, because you, like as an owner, you're the first person on the scene most of the time. So the decisions that you make can really impact the chances of your dog surviving. So that was one of the cases where I was like, oh my God, I really need to start educating pet parents, because you imagine you had one problem that we could have fixed fairly quickly, and now an owner, like unknowingly, it's not their fault, they just didn't know, has caused a problem that's actually a lot worse than the dog having actually eaten the fish hook. It was
we
it
can't
was a
vomit
scary
up. Can't really vomit up a fish hook though, like because
wouldn't
it's
be very-
it's spiky.
Yeah.
Like anything that's spiky or like sticky or long, like
or caustic,
Sharp
like
in general.
especially the caustic stuff. Yeah,
poisons, you can't use vomiting for those things. Like it's not an option. So
and that's I teach all of that stuff in the course. So I really want owners just to be educated. Like knowledge is power, and that's like the course doesn't obviously replace the need for you to go to a vet, but if you can improve the chances of your pet surviving, that's like that knowledge is priceless. Like that's an investment that you have for life. So yeah.
And you save yourself money when you know, is it a vet thing or is it not a vet thing?
Issues too.
Yeah. So
100%.
if it is a vet thing, you're saving yourself money by getting straight to the bloody vet, because it's going to be, the sooner you get there, the cheaper it's going to be, guys. Trust me. Whereas if you already know from the course it's not a vet thing, then it's not a vet thing. So you've saved yourself money there anyway. So do you know what I mean? Like it's either a vet thing or it's not. And being able to identify that as soon as possible, you're going to save yourself a lot of money and heartache, because I can tell you, like that guy with the fish hook, like that's going to cost a lot more money, and probably a dog's going to die anyway. But what would have been probably not that big of a deal if we just went straight to the vet, because we understand that we can't vomit up sharp objects, because obviously imagine if you were trying to vomit up a sharp object, like
or even like I had one client that the dog swallowed a sock and jumped onto Dr. Google, and Google said use washing crystals. So this was, I think, a Cavalier. Owner gave the dog way too many washing crystals to a point where the entire oral cavity of the mouth and part of the esophagus sloughed off. And we couldn't fix it. We had to euthanize the dog. Like there's so much scary advice.
You mean
what are washing crystals?
Like washing soda crystals. It's a bit of an old school method that vets have actually used in the past to induce vomiting. But we don't really use it anymore, or if we do, we're very, very careful with dosages, but it's really caustic. So it induces a vomiting response. But this owner had gone ham and given it way, way too much. And that tissue just completely sloughed off, and it was such a tragic situation. So there's just so much misinformation on Dr. Google, just like there is for people. Like once you start Googling, that's a rabbit hole that you don't want to go down and trust. So
is there a safe, like what would you say would be a safe way to induce vomiting at home, or if you just shouldn't and it should always be at the vet? Always be at the vet.
Yeah, unfortunately always at the vet. Yeah.
Because one of the issues with things like socks and stuff is they can get caught. Like if they vomit it out, like what are you going to do if it gets caught?
It's quite big. still,
Yeah.
like thicken, yeah.
What if it gets caught though? Like, what are you gonna do? I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah,
I've made
it's
my
gotta be
dog.
it's
I've
got to
done
be
it.
a
I've done it
controlled
before.
environment. Yeah.
Yeah, you're running a real risk. Like I've done it before. I can't remember years and years and years ago. But yeah, like there's a basic common like sense you'd think, but obviously it's not. But yeah, soft stuff is something totally different to like things, objects, like vomiting up an object. Like that's pretty full on. That's
But even
crazy.
just inducing vomiting, like a lot of people think it's a benign thing, but let's say the drug that we use to induce vomiting, it's called apomorphine. So it's a morphine derivative. So it's also going to have a sedative component to it. So you are giving, I guess, a drug that's got a sedative property, plus it makes the animal vomit. But let's say you've got a slightly sedated dog or cat, it vomits. What can then happen, one complication that's thankfully quite rare, is what if they inhale what they vomited because they're already a little bit sedated? Then what happens is you're inhaling gastric or stomach contents that's acidic, it's got bacteria, got a lot of nasty stuff.
Yeah.
And if you inhale that into your lungs, you can get what's called an aspiration pneumonia. Aspiration meaning aspirating it into your lungs, and obviously a pneumonia. And that in itself can become life-threatening. So a lot of owners think, oh, just make my dog vomit, it'll be fine. But there's a lot of thought to when we do and when we don't make a dog vomit. And I talk through all about that in my course, but just it's scary. Like I wouldn't recommend doing it at home. It's just like it's got to be a controlled environment because yeah, things can happen and you can't intervene. Like you need medical training and an appropriate facility to actually intervene if you do run into a complication. Yeah.
That's the same with choke in horses, because horses can't vomit, but they can get choke, and that's the problem with it. So most chokes resolve themselves, blah blah blah, but as soon as they start getting like matter, it's like, oh, they probably need to go on antibiotics because they can get that pneumonia from it because they breathe it in. Yeah. It's a pain. Okay, so takeaway messages are there's so much stuff in the course. But it's not a massive time commitment. So don't feel like, oh my God, I'm going to spend 6 months doing this. It's not, and it's riveting. Like I did it in I don't know how many hours I spent on it, but I did it over a couple of weeks on one day. Do you know what I mean? Like I'd spend like an hour and a half or whatever. And it, like once you get going on it, you're like, this is so interesting. Like it's really, really interesting. You can see, even if you like listening to us now, like it's actually riveting to talk about this stuff. It is a bit stressful, you know, knowing all these things that can happen, but it's better to be aware because I can't remember which one it was. Like I said before, when I got to work and I was like, I've left my dogs behind and they've all got bloat or like whatever. I was like, oh my God. But they didn't, they were fine. But it's better to know these things. Few reasons. Why this is so important for therapy dogs, okay? So it's important for every pet owner. I'm sure we've established that. The reason it's so important for therapy dog handlers is because you're sharing your dog. So if you want to share your dog with the community, you then have taken on this extra. This is why we talk to people about getting pet insurance as well, okay? Because you don't want to have to go to school on Monday and everyone's like, where's Fido? And you're like, oh, he got hit by a car and it's going to cost $2,000 to get his leg fixed, so we put him down. That's not the situation that you want to be in, because you've got 700 kids that love Fido and they're like, what the hell? Like, why, what the hell? You have to have pet insurance, in my opinion. I'd pay an exorbitant amount of money for pet insurance, but you have to have it. And then considering that like you just said, you're the first responder. So you're the first responder in your pet's first aid, emergency, whatever circumstances. So it's important not only for the outcomes of your pet's well-being, but also for the fact of you need to not panic, because if these things happen in a workplace, in a working environment, whether there's clients around, colleagues around, whatever, you really need to be able to deal with these situations and keep it together as much as possible, and not completely lose the plot, which is really hard. I'm the kind of person that calls the vet crying. Like that's totally me. Like, and I actually had to hang up.
I don't even know how many times I've cried at the vet for like little things.
Every time.
I cry at the vet too. When it's my own dogs, I completely get it.
I cry in the waiting room because everyone else's dog's coming in and they're sick, and I just cry in the waiting room.
It's such an emotional space.
Love your vet, guys. It's very important that you look after your vets, because they have to put up with this shit all day, every day, and it's us doing stupid things like iCads out of our bloody whatever, or like, you know, we have all these animals and then we go in there and cry and carry on. I had to hang up on my vet when I called them about one of my horse. He got a Sweeney shoulder, which is just a nerve injury, but I thought he broke his shoulder, which isn't even, I thought his shoulder was broken. I couldn't even explain to the vet. I just had to hang up because I was crying. She was like, hello, and I was just crying too much, and I was like, I'm so sorry, and I just hung up. And then I called a different vet. Funny. So, you know, I get it, guys. I get it. I'm a wreck. Like, I'm an actual wreck. Like, I'm shocking. So, and even when I had $0 to my name, I spent $20,000 on a colic surgery. So I get it. I get it. I'm a wreck. But when there's a client around, you just can't be. You just can't be. You've got to keep your shit together, because it's very, very important that the client doesn't now feel traumatized by what's going on with the animal that they are also bonded with, because that's what, if you're doing your job correctly, then the client is bonded with the animal. That's the whole point, that they're there. The animal is not well, but then you're also having a breakdown, and there's no one to care for the client in that situation. They're having to care for you or whatever, or they're just extra traumatized because you're a mess. So you really do need to be able to keep it together. Have your breakdown on the inside, that's fine, but you need to keep it together on the outside. The easiest way to do that, I cannot stress this enough, is to be informed. Like, you just can't do this without being informed. Every one of those situations that I spoke about before, like, I was able to just keep it together because there's a client here, there's something happening, okay, I just need to deal with it. I know what to do. And your training kicks in and you're like, okay, cool, I know what I need to do here. Even if that is like, it's like human first aid. Just call 000. Just call 000. Go to the vet. Just get to the vet. Just know where your emergency vets are. I was at a Brumby camp and I took Sonny to the emergency vet in the middle of the night because he was sleeping funny. And I was like, I don't like the look of this. Get in the car. And I had to take him to like 40 minutes down the road. But I had to know where the nearest emergency vet was because we were camping. It's the middle of the night and I was, away from home. So anyway, he was fine. I had no sleep. I was like, okay, fine. But yeah, so you've got to be able to stay calm, get the dog to the vet, but you've got to keep the dog calm, because if you panic and freak out, that makes it so much worse for the dog. You've got to really try and stay calm to keep your dog calm. And especially the last thing I want to mention is the first aid kit. So Olga, is there a first aid kit on your website still?
I'm revamping it at the moment, so hopefully in 2025 it will be available. I'm updating it, making it even better. So yeah, that's a little wait and see.
Perfect, because I had a look at it all. I've obviously got all that stuff, but I was going to grab one because we're lucky. Like, I work from home where I've got cupboards full of this shit. And then the clinic, we're in the same place all the time, but we need one for the clinic, and it needs to be out in the hallway where everyone can get to it ASAP. Because one of the things that I actually spoke to someone about this the other day, I'm wrapping up, we're finishing up, but scratches and scrapes, anything like that, the kids want to see it tended to. So I always keep, so it happens with the horses as well. So something that we could see, like a scratch or a scab or something like that, the kids that we work with, they want to see that tended to. They'll say like, oh, they hurt. Like, and you can know that it's just a scratch or whatever, but you, in the role that we're in, I'm a psychologist. So in the role that I'm in, I'm modeling. So the way, and that's how animal assisted therapy works, is that I'm modeling the way that I care for this animal is the way that I'm going to care for you. So especially if that pops up as something like, oh, they've got a scratch on them, I do they have, okay, let's go and get some cream and let's fix that up. And we do it together, and we do this nurturing, and it's a whole modeling thing. It happens with the dogs, it happens with the horses. happened last week. Nala had this like puncture wound. I don't know how she got it. I saw a scab on her like the day before, and I was like, oh, that's weird. Like, it was just a scab. I'm like, is that a tick? You know, like, it's just a scab. Took her to work the next day. The scab comes off. It's like a puncture wound of some sort. And I'm like, okay, like, we're at work.
What did she get up to? Goodness.
I don't know how she did it. I thought, so it looked like the start of a hot spot. Like, I was like, is this a hot spot? So I was like, damn, but we've got creams and things at work. I've got betadine and stuff like that at work for our little, got like 2 or 3 things just ready to go for if the kids go like, oh, whatever. And so I've treated it, whatever. And then literally that afternoon in the kids group, the boys in the group were like, she's got a sore. We need to do something about it. And you have to get the creams out. And so I keep like honey creams and stuff like that, where you can put it on paw, that sort of stuff. You can put it on 100 times a day if you want, like, doesn't matter. So, but the kids have to see that kind of thing. So she didn't go to work this week because she's still got this. I shaved her when I got home and all that sort of stuff. It's fine. It's like nearly gone. Turned out to not be a hotspot, thank God. But anyway, point being, you have to be seen to be, so even though I knew I'd already put stuff on it, am I making
they don't
sense?
know that you put stuff on it. They need to see that happen.
Yes. And even though I've told them, and I literally had the creams on my table, like in the room, you know, they need to see that it's being taken care of. So I've had that happen a million times, right, in sessions. So that tells me a little bit of insight into how the clients experience the animals. That makes sense. Like, it is very important to them that the animals are properly looked after. Like, they need to have clean water bowls and they need to have these things. And if they don't, they'll pick you up on it. And you'll be cleaning the water bowl. Like, that's for sure. So having your first aid plays into that, doesn't it? Because it's like, you actually do need to be able to care for this animal, and especially in the unfortunate event that something goes on, like a heat stroke or like Kiki could have seriously broken her tail that day, you know, like, I don't know, like, she's pretty heavy. She sat on it. So, and then like fell over backwards for no reason. So yeah, all these things are things that can happen. Oliver broke his leg because he was running along a pool fence line, and Isabel, the one with the brain injury, she ran past him and pushed him, and as he was running, and his leg went through the pool fence and just snapped his tibia in half. He's got like a $5,000 plate in his leg. Get pet insurance. Cost me like $150.
I've even got pet insurance as a vet, and even though I get like an industry discount, 1,000% I've got pet insurance for all the fur kiddos.
It's just peace of mind.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So when you're listening to this, go and have a look at Dr. Olga's website. Jump on there, have a look at the first aid course, but also keep, do you have social medias and stuff that people can follow so we know when the first aid kit is back?
Yes. My Instagram is like at Dr. Olga Lynn. And I often post a lot of free advice on there as well. Like I recently did one on if your dog's eaten something that they shouldn't, like my dog Cracker tried to eat a cigarette butt, how to safely get that out of their mouth. So
what a houser.
I know, right? lots of good things on there. Like I've got heaps of educational stuff, like patient stories, that sort of thing. So yeah, can follow me there. And then obviously there's the website. One more thing I just wanted to mention, just because I'm seeing so many cases at the moment, just make sure that your pets are on tick prevention. I'm seeing 40 cases of tick paralysis a week. And usually it's animals that aren't on tick prevention. And treating tick paralysis, it's not easy. It's even if you do all the right things, I'd probably say about 30 to 40% have been not making it. So please, everyone have your pets on tick prevention. It's an awful condition. Your animals can't walk, they can't breathe properly, they can't swallow, they can't pee. It's awful. So please, everyone have your pets on tick prevention.
I'm in Southeast Queensland. I'm in Southeast Queensland as well, and I'm pulling ticks off of horses every day. And I hadn't been. So I was pulling ticks off every day, maybe about 3 or 4 weeks ago. And then I've had none. And then this last week, I'm pulling ticks off every day. So if they're coming in up on the horses, we get really serious about it. So when they first come up on the horses, that's when I know the season started, and it was before you think as well.
100%. Yeah. Yeah.
That the ticks seemed very early. And that's when the goats all got their tick collars on. And the dogs are on their shit all year because it's just too risky. So it's way too easy to give dogs tick prevention than to not do it. Like it's one of those, whereas the tick collars, like I have to put the tick collars back on the goats. I've already had to replace them twice because they get them off. Because they don't care about their lives, obviously, and they're tiny, they're dwarf goats. Yeah, they're like 25 kilos. I'm like, you will die immediately with a tick. With horses, you've got time. I've got time with horses, but the bloody goats, I'm like, can you please stop doing this to yourself, okay? Just put your collar back on, behave yourself, please. Sit down.
But it's also good to know that you don't have to be in the bush to get a tick. I have so many clients saying, my pets aren't on tick prevention because I just take them for a walk around the block. Nah, yes, you'll still get ticks. Indoor-only cats will still get ticks. It comes on your groceries, on your shoes, on your clothes. So just because you don't live out in the country does not mean that your pet can't get a tick. And that's just, please.
All this wildlife in the suburbs, like possums and things, they drop ticks, don't they? Like,
Yeah, really anything can carry a tick.
Can drop ticks around. Yeah. No, it's scary.
They're so tiny when they're not, like when they're not latched on, they're so tiny. They would blow through the air. Like they
might just feel like a scab as well. Like I pulled one off Dougie and it was like anytime he does have a scab, I'm like because it feels the same. Like it does. You just pass it off as a scab when they've first latched on.
And there's tick tweezers in your tweezer thingies in your first aid kit as well, which actually prompted me, and I had a tick key, which is fine. Like it's pretty good. And then I was like, I'm gonna get some of those ones more like what was in your kit. And I am obsessed with them. I'm pulling
What's the difference?
So many people aren't pulling off ticks all the time. I'm pulling off ticks all the time.
Is it the ones that like slip through and then it's fantastic. Yeah,
and like heaps easier, and especially because horses, they're almost always on their bloody muzzles because they're grazing, and so it's around their soft nose stuff and things like that, and so they're like, stop poking at me when you're trying to really like get the tick properly off, and they're embedded, like because you're catching. If they're really big, it's easy to get them off with the tick key, but if they're I really like the tweezers, and I stole that from your first aid kit chat.
Yay.
I was like, I'm getting some of them. So thank you. So everybody, please have a look. What's your website?
drolgalynn.com.au. So Dr. Dr. Olga Olga Lynn Lynn.com.au.
I just can't stress enough how important it is to have this knowledge, and I wouldn't recommend the course if it was not worth it. I don't do things like that. So yeah, jump on and have a look. And thank you so much, Dr. Olga, for coming and talking to us, because I just knew that I could like jump on and have a bit of a rant about it. But I just knew that like if we actually got you on to talk about it, that people will be like, oh no, actually I think it's important. I think I need to do it. So thank you for your time today.
Thank you guys for having me. No, it's just knowledge is power, and that's the whole point of the course. I just want pet parents to be prepared and give their pets the best chance possible. That's the main thing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys.
Legend.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. If you're interested in studying with Therapy Dogs Australia, or you have a few more questions before deciding, please get in touch with us by emailing courses@therapydog.com.au or visiting our website at www.therapydog.com.au for more information and FAQs.